If you had told me 2 years ago that my life would blow up over a pair of cheap motel keycards, I would have laughed in your face. But here we are. My name's Daniel. I'm 41 years old, born and raised in Ohio, now living just outside Nashville in one of those quiet little towns where everybody waves whether they know you or not. You know the kind, backyard barbecues, kids riding bikes till sundown, the whole picture-perfect postcard thing. For 15 years, I thought I had it made. I had a decent job managing logistics for a distribution company, a modest house we fixed up ourselves, 2 goofy Labradors, and a wife who still looked at me like I hung the moon. Her name's Lisa. And if you had asked me 6 months ago if I trusted her, I would have said, without hesitation, with my life. Turns out, I probably shouldn't have trusted her with my TV remote, let alone my life. It started small. It always does. Lisa started staying late at the bookstore she managed, working inventory, or so she said. Thing is, Lisa hated inventory. Always had. She used to come home cussing and throwing her shoes across the room after spending a day counting books. Now suddenly, she couldn't get enough of it? First red flag. Then came the phone thing. You know what I'm talking about, that subtle shift where the phone goes from lying face up on the table to suddenly always face down. Or how she'd jump if a text came through, pretending it was just work. Second red flag. Of course, at first, I told myself it was nothing. We'd been together too long for me to go acting like some jealous teenager. I mean, come on, this was Lisa. The same girl who used to forget to lock her car doors because nobody steals in small towns. The same girl who cried when we lost our first dog, even after saying she didn't want a dog in the first place. There's no way she could lie to me, right? Well, that's where the gut feeling comes in. That little voice you try so hard to ignore because you're scared of what it's trying to tell you. One night, it spoke up loud and clear. It was about 11 p.m. I woke up thirsty, wandered into the kitchen, and there she was, standing out on the back porch, whispering into her phone. Not just talking, whispering. Like she was 16 years old again, sneaking around her parents' house. I couldn't hear much. Just a few phrases through the screen door. Can't wait to see you again. It's killing me too. That was all I needed to hear. I stood there in the dark like a statue, my glass still empty, my heart somehow heavier than it had ever been. And you know what I did? Nothing. I backed away quietly, got back into bed, and pulled the covers over my head like a coward. Because facing the truth felt like stepping off a cliff. And honestly, at that moment, I wasn't ready to fall. The next few days were a blur. I'd kiss her goodbye in the mornings, watch her drive off to work, and feel like some kind of idiot left standing on the curb. At night, she'd come home smiling, acting normal, asking about my day like nothing was wrong. And I'd sit there, playing along, wondering who exactly she was thinking about when she smiled. Maybe I could have lived like that pretending for a while longer. But life, as it turns out, has a way of yanking the blindfold off whether you're ready or not. It happened a week later. Lisa told me she had to attend a weekend training seminar 2 hours away in Chattanooga. I nodded like a fool, told her to drive safe, even packed her a little bag of snacks for the road. Yeah, I packed snacks for my wife to go cheat on me. Let that sink in. After she left, I sat on the couch with the dog snoring at my feet, flipping through the channels, not really watching anything. That little voice, the one I'd been trying so hard to ignore, was screaming now. So I did something I'd never done before. I checked her laptop. Yeah, I know privacy and all that. But listen, when your marriage feels like it's hanging by a thread, privacy takes a back seat. At first, there was nothing. Normal stuff, emails about work, some online shopping carts with half-bought shoes. And then, buried in the downloads folder like she didn't even try that hard to hide it, I found the receipts. 2 nights booked at the Sweet Maple Inn. Not a business hotel. Not even close. It was the kind of place you rent by the hour if you catch my drift. The reservation was under her name. No mention of a seminar. No corporate discount. Just a cheap motel room and a confirmation number. And just like that, the whole house of cards I'd been living in came crashing down. I sat there staring at the screen, the dog still snoring at my feet, feeling like the dumbest man alive. 15 years. 15 years of birthdays, Christmases, anniversaries, Sunday mornings reading the paper, late-night grocery runs, inside jokes nobody else understood. All of it, just background noise while she lined up her next act. I didn't cry. I didn't even yell. I just sat there, hollowed out, staring at the screen like maybe if I blinked enough times, it would all disappear. But it didn't. It just sat there, mocking me, like the world's worst punchline. After I found the motel booking on Lisa's laptop, I sat there for a long while. Long enough that the ice melted in my glass and the dogs started whining for dinner. I wish I could tell you I jumped into action like some movie hero, that I grabbed my keys, drove straight to that motel, kicked down the door, and caught her red-handed. But real life doesn't work like that. No, instead, I sat on the couch staring at nothing, feeling like a man whose whole world just tilted sideways. I kept asking myself the same stupid questions. When did it start? Was it my fault? Was there something I missed, something I didn't give her? After a while, I realized sitting there feeling sorry for myself wasn't getting me anywhere. I needed a plan. Not a big, flashy one. Just something solid enough to keep me from losing what little sanity I had left. I grabbed my old work notebook, the same one I used for tracking shipments and inventory back in my warehouse days, and started writing things down. Motel, Sweet Maple Inn, room 203, according to the reservation. Check-in time, Friday, 6 p.m. Checkout, Sunday noon. I stared at that last line for a while. 2 whole nights. 2 nights she was supposed to be learning about inventory management, or whatever nonsense she told me. I sat there, tapping the pen against the notebook, feeling like the dumbest man alive. And then, slowly, the anger started to seep in. It's funny how that happens. At first, you're just hurt. You feel small, hollowed out. Like someone took a crowbar to your ribs and pried you open. But after the hurt comes the anger. And anger? Anger gives you energy. So I made a decision. The next morning, I called in sick to work, first time in 3 years. Told my boss I had food poisoning or something. He sounded concerned, told me to rest up. If only he knew. I packed a small bag, just the essentials, a change of clothes, a phone charger, some snacks, and a camera. Nothing fancy. Just enough to camp out for a day or 2. Then I booked a room at the Comfort Inn right across the street from Sweet Maple. Nothing fancy there, either. 2-star motel. Flickering neon sign. Lobby that smelled like stale coffee and pine cleaner. But it had one thing going for it. A clear view of the Sweet Maple parking lot. And that's all I needed. I checked into room 214. Asked for the highest floor they had. The clerk didn't ask questions. Just slid the key card across the counter and went back to scrolling on his phone. I went up to my room, dropped my bag, and pulled a chair up to the window. It felt ridiculous, sitting there like some second-rate private eye. But this wasn't about pride anymore. This was about answers. I spent most of that Friday pacing the room, drinking too much bad coffee from the lobby, and watching the minutes crawl by. Around 5:45 p.m., right on schedule, a silver Honda Civic pulled into the Sweet Maple parking lot. Lisa's car. I leaned forward, heart hammering against my ribs. She got out, looking happy, carefree. Wearing a short blue dress I didn't recognize, something new, something meant for someone else's eyes. She checked her reflection in the car mirror, touched up her lipstick, then grabbed a small overnight bag from the back seat and headed inside. Room 203. I watched the door close behind her and sat back, feeling like someone had just gut-punched me. I don't know why, but some stupid part of me still hoped that maybe it was all innocent. That maybe she was meeting a group of coworkers. That maybe she had some legitimate reason to book a room at a love motel. But hope's a funny thing. It sticks around longer than it should. About 15 minutes later, that hope got crushed for good. A black pickup truck pulled in big, shiny, a Texas license plate even though we were in Tennessee. Out climbed a man. Big guy. Tall, broad shoulders, confident walk. The kind of man who doesn't knock. The kind of man who knows he's expected. He didn't hesitate. He didn't look around nervously. He just grabbed a duffel bag from the truck and made a beeline straight for room 203. No hesitation. No second guessing. He knocked once, barely even a real knock, and the door opened like he already had the key. I didn't even need to see what happened next. I already knew. I sat there gripping the arms of the chair so hard the cheap wood creaked under my fingers. The dogs back home were probably still lying on the couch, waiting for her to come back. Waiting for the woman who used to sneak them bits of steak under the table, who used to curl up with them on stormy nights. And here she was, throwing all of that away for a few stolen nights in a $59 a night motel. The anger burned hotter now, but I stayed put. Because marching across the street and making a scene wouldn't change anything. I needed proof. Proof I could hold up in front of her without a single word. Proof that said, I know. I saw. I'm done. So I waited. An hour passed. Then 2. At some point, I realized I hadn't eaten all day. Not that it mattered. My stomach was tied up in 1,000 knots anyway. The light in room 203 stayed off except for a faint blue glow from the TV. Every so often, I saw a shadow cross the window. Two figures. Laughing. Moving close. I didn't need to imagine the rest. It was happening. Right there. 30 yards away. And there I was, sitting by a window, clutching a cheap camera, documenting the end of my marriage. The worst part? I wasn't even surprised. Not really. Sad, sure. Angry, definitely. But surprised? No. Maybe deep down, I'd seen it coming all along. Maybe that's why it hurt so much less than I thought it would. Because sometimes, the saddest part isn't when they betray you. It's when you realize you were already halfway out the door yourself, and just too stubborn to admit it. That night at the Comfort Inn felt like the longest of my life. I didn't sleep. Didn't even try. I just sat there in that stiff-backed chair, watching room 203 across the street like some sad, broken ghost. The neon vacancy sign buzzed and flickered all night long, casting everything in this sickly green glow. It almost felt right, like even the universe knew something was rotting. Around midnight, I saw the lights inside room 203 dim down. No more movement. No more shadows flickering against the cheap curtains. I sat there staring at that dark window for hours, my body aching, my mind racing. I thought maybe I'd seen the worst already. That maybe the worst thing was knowing what was happening behind that door. Turns out, I was wrong. There's worse. Morning came slow and gray. The kind of morning that doesn't bring hope, just more of the same. I poured myself another lukewarm cup of coffee from the dusty lobby pot and got back to my spot at the window. Around 7:30 a.m., the door to room 203 cracked open. There they were. Lisa stepped out first, her hair pulled up into a lazy ponytail, wearing the same blue dress from yesterday, now wrinkled and hurried. Behind her, the man followed, duffel bag slung over one shoulder, looking way too pleased with himself for someone leaving a budget motel. They were laughing. Actually laughing. I pressed my forehead against the cool glass, staring at them through the haze. No guilt. No shame. Just two people walking off into the morning like they hadn't just set fire to someone else's life. They loaded their bags into their cars, kissed once, quick, casual, and then peeled out of the parking lot in different directions. Just like that. Like it was any other Sunday morning. I sat there, my fists clenched so tight my nails dug into my palms. I could have driven home then. Could have packed up my broken pride and gone back to my half-empty house. But something in me said no. Not yet. You need to see it all. You need to feel every rotten inch of it. So I waited another 20 minutes, just to be sure they weren't coming back. Then I grabbed my bag, tucked my camera into my jacket, and crossed the street. The sweet Maple Inn was as quiet as a graveyard. The front office clerk was nowhere to be seen, probably sleeping off last night's TV binge. Perfect. I made my way up the cracked concrete stairs, my boots echoing louder than I liked, but there was no one around to care. Room 203. The door was unlocked. Of course it was. I pushed it open slowly, the hinges groaning like they didn't want any part of what I was about to see. The room was exactly what you'd expect. Stale air. Sheets tangled and half hanging off the mattress. TV still muttering quietly in the background to no one. I stepped inside, my heart hammering against my ribs. At first, I didn't know what I was looking for. I just needed something. Some final nail in the coffin. And then I saw them. On the nightstand. Crumpled, careless, forgotten. A couple of empty little wrappers, shiny, torn at the corners, sitting there like discarded receipts from a cheap meal neither of them wanted to remember. No need for details. You can fill in the blanks. Seeing them hit harder than I expected. Harder than the photos. Harder than the laughing. Harder than anything else. Because it made it real. Undeniable. They hadn't just flirted. They hadn't just kissed. They'd gone all the way. In a place where the walls were too thin and the sheets smelled like cigarette smoke. I walked further into the room, moving slow, like if I moved too fast, I'd break whatever fragile thing was left inside me. Their empty wine glasses were still on the table. An open pizza box sat half-eaten on the dresser. For a second, standing there, I thought about the nights Lisa and I used to spend curled up together, watching bad movies, eating takeout, laughing until we couldn't breathe. It wasn't fancy. It wasn't perfect. But it was ours. Or at least, it was supposed to be. And now here she was, replaying our life with someone else. Like I was nothing but a rehearsal. I swallowed hard, blinked against the sting behind my eyes, and forced myself to take a few quick pictures. The wrappers. The glasses. The messy bed. Proof. Cold, undeniable proof. Not because I needed revenge. Not because I wanted to shame her. But because someday, when she tried to rewrite the story, when she said it just happened once or it wasn't serious, I could pull these photos out and remind myself of the truth. And remind her too, if it came to that. When I finished, I stood there for a long minute, just breathing. In, out, trying to find whatever was left of the man who walked into that motel room. When I finally stepped back into the parking lot, the sun was higher now, casting long shadows across the cracked asphalt. I slid into my car, started the engine, and stared out at the road ahead. It stretched on forever. Empty, quiet, full of things I didn't want to think about. But I drove anyway, because standing still wasn't an option anymore. Not for me. Not after this. I drove back to the Comfort Inn after leaving that sad little motel room, hands locked on the steering wheel, heart thudding like a drum in my ears. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. Didn't punch the dashboard or blast angry music. I just drove. Like a man clocking in for a shift he never wanted. Back in my room, I sat on the edge of the bed, the camera and the plastic bag of evidence sitting beside me like two heavy bricks. I stared at them for a long time. And that's when the idea started forming. Slow. Steady. Solid. I wasn't going to fight Lisa. I wasn't going to argue or beg or ask her why. No, sir. I was going to let her bury herself. With her own hands. And I had just the tools to help her dig that grave a little faster. Sitting right there on the nightstand. Still half crumpled. Still reeking of betrayal. I thought about it for a long time, weighing every option, playing out every possible move like a game of chess. I didn't want chaos. I wanted something better. Poetic justice. The kind of payback that didn't leave me looking like the crazy ex-husband. The kind that unfolded slow, sweet, and devastating. The best revenge is the kind they never see coming. And buddy, I was about to write a masterpiece. First thing I did was put on a pair of gloves. Yeah, I packed some. Habit from working around chemicals at the plant. I handled everything carefully, the way you'd handle something toxic. Because that's what it was now, pure poison. I bagged everything separately. Labeled it. Photographed it again. Timestamped everything with my phone. Chain of custody, as they call it on those crime shows Lisa used to binge watch. Ironic, huh? Next, I made a call to a buddy of mine from high school, Mike. Mike's the kind of guy who knows a guy for just about anything. No questions asked. When he picked up, I kept it simple. Hey, Mike, I need a favor. Quiet favor. He didn't even blink. Name it, he said. I told him I needed a private courier. Someone who could deliver a package, no names, no return address, to a very specific location. Preferably during business hours, when the most eyes would be around to see it. Mike whistled low, but he agreed. Said he'd have a guy ready by noon tomorrow. Good. Perfect. Now, the question was, where to send the package? Home? Too easy. Too private. No, I needed a bigger stage. A place where Lisa's little secret would crack open in front of the right people. And then it hit me. Her job. The cozy little bookstore where she was a manager. The place where she played the sweet, trustworthy employee everyone loved. They had a staff meeting every Wednesday morning. Mandatory. All hands on deck. Tomorrow was Wednesday. It was almost too perfect. I smiled to myself, small, cold, satisfied. Sometimes the universe throws you a bone. I spent the next few hours putting together the package. Neatly. Methodically. Inside, I included a simple brown envelope. Printed copies of the photos from the motel timestamped. A flash drive with the same images and a short video clip I'd managed to catch of Lisa and her friend leaving room 203 together. And at the very bottom, sealed in a clear evidence bag, the wrappers they'd left behind. Tied together with a little handwritten note that simply said, a glimpse behind the closed doors of your trusted store manager. Enjoy. No threats. No drama. No swearing. Just cold, hard facts. Let the pictures do the talking. Let the evidence scream the truth. I sealed the box carefully, double-checked everything twice, and dropped it off with Mike's courier that evening. Delivery scheduled for 10 a.m. sharp, right when the weekly staff meeting would be starting. Right when everyone would be sitting there, sipping bad coffee and pretending to care about quarterly sales numbers. When I got back to the Comfort Inn, I finally allowed myself to exhale. It wasn't over. Not by a long shot. There would still be fallout. There would still be messy conversations, broken furniture, maybe even a few crocodile tears along the way. But for the first time in weeks, I felt like I had the upper hand again. Like I wasn't just some sad sap watching his life fall apart from the sidelines. I was choosing how this ended, on my terms. And the best part? I wasn't even going to have to lift a finger when it all came crashing down. Lisa would destroy herself just fine without my help. All I had to do was open the door. And buddy, tomorrow morning, the door was going to swing wide open. The next morning, I woke up before sunrise. Not because of nerves. I slept like a baby, believe it or not. First full night's sleep in months. Turns out, knowing exactly what you're going to do and why you're doing it is better than any sleeping pill. I grabbed a cup of motel coffee, sat by the window, and watched the sunrise over the little nothing town where my life used to feel so solid. At 9:45 a.m., I checked my phone. Mike's guy texted. Package delivered. Good luck. I stared at that message for a moment. No fanfare. No fireworks. Just 3 words that meant my marriage was about to detonate. Exactly the way it needed to. At 10:15 a.m., I parked across the street from Lisa's bookstore, the bright pages, and waited. Didn't want to get too close. Didn't want to be seen. Just sat there, engine off, sunglasses on, pretending to scroll through my phone like any bored guy killing time. From my spot, I had a decent view through the big glass windows. I saw the staff gathering in the little conference area near the back, about a dozen people, all with their coffee cups and meeting faces on. Lisa was right there, front and center, clipboard in hand. Boss lady mode. For a second, a tiny flicker of old affection stirred in me. It died just as fast, because I knew what was about to happen. Right on cue, a courier with a clipboard strolled through the door, handed the brown box to the girl at the front counter. She carried it back like it was just another delivery, no idea she was holding a live grenade. I watched Lisa set her clipboard down and open the box. Slow, casual. And then I saw it, that sharp, sudden jolt in her shoulders. Like someone had punched her in the stomach. She rifled through the photos, the flash drive, the evidence bag. Even from where I sat, I could see the blood drain from her face. The girl next to her leaned over to peek and recoiled like she'd touched a hot stove. Whispers started. Heads turned. The store manager, her assistant, some older woman named Marge, grabbed a handful of papers and squinted at them, her mouth twisting into something between shock and disgust. Lisa tried to say something. I could see her hands moving, fast, urgent, but the damage was done. In a matter of seconds, the whole meeting collapsed. People backing away, murmuring, giving her that look. You know the one that says, "We don't know you anymore." Lisa gathered the materials fast, shoving everything back into the box like she could somehow stuff the truth back inside it. She stood up, too fast, knocking over her coffee. Hot brown liquid spilled across the conference table, forgotten. She stormed toward the manager's office at the back, slamming the doors so hard the whole window rattled. I sat there watching, completely still. Not smiling, not gloating, just breathing. Because sometimes justice doesn't come with applause or fireworks. Sometimes it's quiet, heavy, inevitable. Of course, the best part? Lisa didn't have the slightest idea who had sent it. Not yet. She was too busy drowning in her own panic to connect the dots. And I planned to keep it that way, at least for a little while longer. Because while Lisa was busy trying to put out the fire at work, I was already lighting the next one. That afternoon, I had my second meeting of the day. Only this time, it wasn't with Mike's courier. It was with my lawyer. Old Mr. Grayson, been practicing family law for 40 years. Calm, sharp-eyed, and about as sentimental as a bulldozer. Exactly what I needed. We sat in his wood-paneled office, the air thick with the smell of old books and stronger coffee. I laid everything out for him. Plain. Simple. No sob stories. He listened, nodding, jotting a few notes. When I finished, he set down his pen and leaned back in his chair. "You ready to file?" he asked. I nodded once. Quietly, I said, "I don't want her seeing this coming." He smiled just a little, like a surgeon sizing up an easy operation. "No problem," he said. "We'll draft everything tonight. Serve her papers before she knows which way's up." "And the house?" I asked. "And the accounts? And the cars?" He steepled his fingers. "If we move now, before she gets a lawyer of her own, we can lock down the assets. Put a hold on transfers. Retitle what's in your name. By the time she wakes up, it'll all be buttoned up tighter than a drum." Good. Exactly what I wanted. No shouting matches. No drawn-out battles. Just precision. I signed where he told me. Initialed where I had to. It felt strange, writing the end of something that had lasted 15 years with a few strokes of a pen. But it also felt right. Clean. Honest. Like breathing fresh air after months stuck in a smoky room. When I walked out of Grayson's office, the sun was just starting to set. A golden, Heavy lights stretched across the town, making everything look softer than it deserved. I climbed into my truck, feeling lighter than I had in weeks. Tomorrow, the real work would begin. Tomorrow, Lisa would come home, rattled, broken, desperate to fix what couldn't be fixed. But tonight, I was free. Free from the guessing. Free from the pretending. Free from the man I used to be. The man who thought love could survive anything if you just loved hard enough. Turns out, love needs two people willing to fight for it. Not just one. And me? I was done fighting for someone who gave up first. The funny thing about endings is, they don't usually look like you expect. You picture shouting matches, tears, thrown plates, maybe even a scene straight out of a bad soap opera. But the real endings? They come quiet. They come with a pen sliding across the kitchen counter and the sound of a door clicking shut. It was Thursday afternoon when Lisa finally came home. Later than usual, looking rough around the edges. Eyes puffy, hair a mess, pale like she'd seen a ghost, or maybe like she'd seen herself for the first time in a long time. She walked through the door carrying the same tote bag she always used for work. Except this time, it looked like it weighed 1,000 pounds. I was sitting at the kitchen table when she came in. Calm. Waiting. The divorce papers sat neatly in a manila folder in front of me. The house deed was already in my name. The cars, too. Bank accounts frozen, split, protected. It was done. All that was left was handing her the final goodbye. She dropped her bag by the door and blinked at me, confused. She was expecting what? An apology? An argument? Some desperate cling to the life she had already thrown away? She stepped forward, opening her mouth to speak, but I held up one hand. Stopped her cold. Without a word, I slid the folder across the table. It landed with a soft thump. Lisa stared at it like it was a live bomb. Slowly, she reached out and opened it. Read the first line. Saw her own name next to the word respondent. Saw mine next to petitioner. Saw the line, irreconcilable differences. Her hands started to shake. No, she whispered. Daniel, please, no. Please. This isn't what I want. Her voice cracked hard on the last word. I said nothing. Just watched. Watched the panic bloom behind her eyes. Watched the reality crash down around her like a house of cards. She tried again, stepping closer. I was stupid, she said, voice trembling. I made a mistake, but we can fix this. We can go to counseling. I'll quit my job. I'll do anything. Anything. Funny word, coming from someone who hadn't been willing to do something when it actually mattered. Still, I stayed silent. Let her scramble. Let her twist. Tears started spilling down her face. The kind of ugly, desperate crying you only see when someone realizes they've lost. Really lost. She dropped to her knees in front of me, clutching my hands like she could physically hold herself in my life if she just squeezed hard enough. Please, Daniel. Please don't do this. You're my whole world. I love you. I never stopped loving you. I finally looked her dead in the eyes and said the first words I had spoken since she walked through the door. You stopped loving me the second you opened that motel door. She let out a broken, gasping sound, like she'd been hit. Good. Let her feel even a fraction of what she had dished out. I stood up slowly, her hands slipping off mine like dead weight. Walked to the front door, opened it wide. Cold autumn air rushed into the house. I turned back to her, still kneeling, still crying. Take your things, I said quietly, and go. At first, she didn't move, just stared at me, eyes wild, like a trapped animal. Daniel, please, we built a life. We built a home. We have history. I shook my head once. History doesn't make a future. Her face crumpled at that. Full collapse. I have nowhere to go, she choked out. I shrugged, not cruel, just honest. Should have thought about that before you decided someone else's bed was more important than our home. She sat there for a long moment, shoulders shaking. Finally, she got up, staggered over to the door where her tote bag sat. No suitcase. No backup plan. Just her guilt, and whatever scraps she could fit into that one sorry bag. She turned back one last time, tears streaking her face, looking like she wanted to say something, anything that would undo what she'd done. But there aren't enough words for that. Not in this life. So she stepped through the door. I closed it behind her, locked it, and leaned back against it, breathing in deep. Not sadness. Not anger. Just peace. Later that night, I sat on the couch with a beer in one hand and the divorce papers in the other. I reread them once, twice. Not because I doubted the decision, just because it felt good to see it in writing. Proof that sometimes, even after being broken down to your bare bones, you can still stand back up. Lisa had nothing now. No husband. No house. No steady paycheck. Pretty sure the bookstore wasn't keen on keeping her after the package arrived. She traded a lifetime for a weekend. Traded real love for fake affection in a motel room that probably still smelled like disappointment. And me? I still had a long road ahead. Healing isn't instant. Trust doesn't regrow overnight. But at least now I was walking it free, not dragging a liar behind me. And brother, that's worth more than all the history in the world.